clearly somebody didn't want that information to be in the public domain, and then this decision was reversed, which I think is very important because it's in the public interest to know what potential how many soldiers basically are facing potential war crimes allegations.
9 Special Forces troops face potential prosecution over alleged war crimes related to at least 2 incidents in Syria. That's according to figures that officials in the Ministry of Defence tried to keep secret. Larisa Brown is the Times defence editor and she joins me now. Good afternoon, Larisa.
Good afternoon.
Larisa, explain these 2 incidents a little bit more and what these members of the Special Forces are under investigation for now.
Well, the Ministry of Defence won't actually officially confirm what these incidents involve. However, we have previously learnt of a case in Syria. So the new information that we've got is that there were 2 different cases related to Syria that took place, and Special Forces soldiers, 9 of them, are facing potential prosecution over those 2 cases. And the case that we knew about previously involved at least 5 of these people, possibly more. And what had happened is they had they were trying to get hold of a terrorist in Syria, an Islamic State terrorist, and they believed that he was going to carry out a suicide attack. And they killed him, and senior officers allege that they shouldn't have killed him because they were too basically heavy-handed. And although there was a suicide vest primed nearby, he wasn't actually wearing it at the time. So that case is under investigation, and it's quite interesting in itself because there's been a lot of debate centering around comments from Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, and Robert Jenrick with regards to human rights laws and what happens if you do detain a terrorist in a place such as Syria. And they have argued that in some cases you would basically have to just let those terrorists free. So Special Forces soldiers were operating under many constraints when they were serving in Syria. And these were all Special Forces soldiers because the British military doesn't actually officially confirm they have got Special Forces on the ground there.
Yeah. When did these alleged events happen, Larisa?
So this particular case was more than 2 years ago, is what one source would tell me, but they wouldn't go into any further detail. We have had British Special Forces on the ground in Syria for probably around a decade now. In fact, yes, around a decade. And so, I mean, the other cases could have happened at any time, and then now they've been lodged with the prosecutors. And also there was one incident that was related to Afghanistan that the MOD were looking at. Again, we don't have any details about what that actually involves, but it's one individual that is potentially facing court-martial.
So how did these alleged incidents, which could have been, well, some of them, as you say, were a couple of years ago, could have been any time before that, how did they come to light now?
Well, what happened is this original case involving these 5 individuals and the individual potentially wanting to carry out a suicide attack came out a few months ago, and after that I submitted an FOI request with the Ministry of Defence, and I was asking for them to divulge how many cases were actually being investigated altogether in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And actually, the MOD got back to me after 2 months, which is quite an extraordinary timescale anyway. And they said that they wouldn't provide the information because it could undermine British military operations. And I was quite astounded by this, having covered defence for 10 years now. I've previously been told those figures. I've been told information about what the SPA, the Service Prosecuting Authority, is investigating. And then now, obviously, I was told that I wasn't able to have those figures. So I requested a review, and the MOD looked at the case again, and they got back to me just before Christmas on December the 20th with those new figures. So clearly somebody didn't want that information to be in the public domain, and then this decision was reversed, which I think is very important because it's in the public interest to know what potential how many soldiers basically are facing potential war crimes allegations.
Yeah, absolutely. Are these individuals, I should just explain, FOI is Freedom of Information for anyone who's not familiar with the acronym. Are these individuals still actively deployed, Larisa?
It's impossible to know, but the fact that the case is continuing and it's going to be held before court martial would suggest that they are perhaps still serving. But it's, the MOD has provided such limited information that I really am unclear about the details.
Right. So what's the process now?
So we'll probably have to wait quite a while before these cases end up in the courts, and if they do, then we'll obviously then know who what the allegations are.
Mm.
Of course, if these are special forces operations, as they will be in Syria, because there aren't regular troops on the ground in Syria, then it's probably quite likely that some of these details might never be heard in open.
Mm.
And so it could be quite a lengthy process. We might not get any information for a long time.
And does the Ministry of Defence, in your experience, Lister, as you were saying, you've been covering defence for over a decade now, does it generally have an issue with transparency in your experience?
Yes, I think that I do think there's a problem where FOI requests are often denied, these freedom of information requests, on the basis of things like, undermining military operations, and various other reasons, national security. And I think sometimes actually that information should be in the public domain. And I think this is just one of those examples where one official has taken it too far, and clearly they were wrong to try and keep that information out of the public domain.
It's very interesting that they reversed the decision, though. What do you think might have prompted that?
Um, I, I just think that it didn't stand in the first place, the decision, and we just pointed out something very basic, and they decided to reverse it when somebody else actually looked at it who knew how these principles should be applied. I think it's as simple as that, really. I mean, previously we've submitted FOIs, and often, we might try and get them reviewed, and that obviously fails. In this instance, I think that it was quite clear cut that we had been provided this type of information before, and there's no reason why that should change now. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously the context to this as well is that there's a big Afghan inquiry going on at the moment into special forces soldiers and their actions. And as part of this inquiry, the judge is looking at whether British special forces soldiers in Afghanistan had carried out executions of innocent Afghans who were unarmed. And so there's a lot of pressure on special forces soldiers and their behaviour at the moment. And I mean, obviously, I'm speculating here, but perhaps the timing also wasn't considered, particularly the best timing to then have more information out there that actually there are other cases ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Larissa. That's Larisa Brown, who is the Times defence editor.